April 5th, 1962, supposed to be a Wilt Chamberlain game. That's a trap. You see 1962, Warriors Celtics, Game 7, Boston Garden. Immediately, your brain does a lazy historical shortcut. Wilt versus Russell, the monster versus the machine. Individual dominance versus team basketball. All that's true. Also, it's not the whole game, because the leading scorer for Philadelphia that night wasn't Wilt Chamberlain. It was Tom Meschery. Rookie Tom Meschery. 48 minutes, 32 points, 11 rebounds, 10 for 19 from the floor, 12 for 13 at the line. Game 7, Boston Garden, against the Celtics. In the final game the Philadelphia Warriors ever played before the franchise moved west. And history files it under Sam Jones hit the shot. And that's kind of rude. Historically understandable, but still rude. So today, we're fixing it. Welcome back to the Warrior 100. I'm documenting one game per player until I reach 100. This is Warrior 11, Tom Meschery. April 5th, 1962. Boston Celtics 109, Philadelphia Warriors 107. Game 7 of the Eastern Division Finals. The Celtics survive. The Warriors go home. Wilt's 50 points per game season ends one possession short of the NBA Finals. And Tom Meschery, he gets buried under one of the most famous basketball arguments ever. Today's idea, sometimes the best story in a famous game is the guy that history treated like a supporting character. And that's Meschery here. He's not the biggest name or the mythology. He's not the reason this game gets remembered. But he's the reason this game is more interesting than the mythology wants it to be. Because mythology wants it to be clean. Wilt versus Russell. Wilt scores 1 million points. Russell wins the MVP. Celtics win because team basketball defeats the individual giant. That's the nice, tidy version, the version that fits in a hallway plaque. The actual game is messier, better too. Wilt was good in this game, but not volcanic. 22 points, 22 rebounds. For a normal human being, that's a career night. For 1962 Wilt Chamberlain, it looks like someone turned the cheat code off. Bill Russell had 19 with 22. Sam Jones scored 28, Bob Cousy 21, Tom Heinsohn had 25, and Tom Meschery had 32. That numbers the door into this episode, because if Wilt had scored 52 and the Warriors lost, this is the standard Wilt argument again. If Russell had completely erased him, it's the standard Russell argument again. If Boston had blown them out, this is a Dynasty episode, but Philadelphia lost by 2. And the rookie forward played every minute and led them in scoring. That changes the room. So let's set the room. The Celtics locker room isn't complicated. They're the Celtics. They're not searching for themselves, and they aren't having a vibes meeting. They're not wondering whether the core can get over the hump, because they're the hump. Everyone else is trying to get over them. Red Auerbach's the coach. By this point, Red is less the coach than an operating system. He has the pieces. He knows the pieces. He knows which guy can take the last shot, which guy can take a punch, and which guy can defend. He didn't need to make basketball pretty. He needs to make it Boston. Bill Russell is the center of this whole thing. Not because he's the center, because he's the Celtics' central argument. Defense, rebounding, outlet passes, winning possessions that don't look like highlights unless you know what you're watching. Russell's the guy who makes the Celtics feel inevitable, even when the score says they're in trouble. Bob Cousy's still here. Older, but still dangerous. Sam Jones is still becoming Sam Jones. And that's bad news for anybody who enjoys peace in the final 10 seconds of a game. Tom Heinsohn is scoring, rebounding, and generally being the kind of player who probably made opposing teams invent new swear words. Casey Jones is there for defense and structure. Statch Sanders is there. Frank Ramsey's there. The bench, it's not just more bodies, it's more Celtics. That's the Boston temperature check. They're annoyed they even need Game 7, but they're also completely comfortable living inside it. Philadelphia's locker room is different. The Warriors know they can win. They've already pushed Boston this far. They won Game 6 in Philadelphia. They have Wilt, who just averaged 50.4 points per game over an entire NBA season. That sounds like a fake number. They also have Paul Arizin, who's one of the great scorers of the early NBA. They have Tom Gola, who's one of the best all-around players of his era. They have Guy Rogers, who can pass the ball like he's solving a puzzle that nobody else even sees. And they have Al Attles, already part of the franchise fabric, even before becoming a larger Warrior institution later. And they have Tom Meschery, rookie, forward, number 14. He's not the headline and not the reason the cameras would have shown up. But that's the thing about Game 7. It doesn't care where you sit on the poster. It asks what you can do tonight. The coach on Philadelphia's side is Frank McGuire. And there's a little cosmic joke here because McGuire already has Wilt history. In 1957, McGuire coached North Carolina to the NCAA championship. The team North Carolina beat was Kansas. The star for Kansas was Wilt Chamberlain. So McGuire first beats Wilt for a national title, then later coaches Wilt in the NBA, watches him average 50 a game, and still has to deal with Russell and the Celtics. It's not a career arc. That's basketball hazing. McGuire was a serious coach, though, not just a guy standing near Wilt and hoping the math would solve itself. He'd won big in college, and he understood pressure, stars, and in a game like this, you're not just coaching a normal basketball game. You're coaching history, while history's trying to bite you in the leg. Across from him, Red Auerbach is doing the same thing, except Red already has the trophy habit. That's the coach matchup. McGuire's trying to turn the greatest individual season anyone had ever seen into a team breakthrough. Red's trying to keep the Celtics machine from getting flattened by Wilt. Underneath that, Meschery's building his own little rebellion. So before the play-by-play, we need to talk about the week and the league, because 1962 NBA context is bananas. This is an 8-team league. 8. The NBA isn't the continent-sized entertainment empire it becomes later. It's more like a traveling basketball knife fight with better passing. Teams know each other too well. Stars play enormous minutes. Travel is less comfortable. Pace is high. Shot selection's weird by modern standards. Nobody's spacing to the corner for a catch-and-shoot three. The three-point line doesn't even exist. That's rude to future podcasters. Probably fine for them, though. The whole season's absurd statistically. Wilt averages 50.4 points and 25.7 rebounds. Oscar Robertson averages a triple-double. Elgin Baylor's having a monster season while dealing with military obligations. Russell wins the MVP. The Celtics win 60 games. The Warriors win 49. The Lakers are waiting out west with Baylor and Jerry West. So this is one of those seasons where if you wrote it as fiction, the editor would call you and tell you, hey man, calm down. The subplot of the week is simple. Can Wilt's impossible season actually survive Boston? Because that's the argument people still use today. Wilt had the numbers. Russell had the rings. Wilt had the force and Russell had the structure. Wilt had the scoring title by a margin that feels illegal. But Russell had the team that kept telling everyone, hey man, cool numbers. Enjoy your spring. And that's as far as it goes. But the lazy version turns everyone else into furniture. That's what this episode refuses to do. Because Tom Meschery wasn't furniture. His biography is one of those lives where you almost have to stop and make sure that you didn't accidentally combine three people. He was born Tomislav Nikolaevich Meshyarkov in Harbin, Manchuria in 1938. His family was Russian. During World War II, he and his family were interned in a camp in Tokyo. After the war, they came to the United States. He grew up in San Francisco and became Tom Meschery. He went to St. Mary's, became an All-American. The Philadelphia Warriors drafted him 7th overall in 1961. That's already a full human story before he even gets to the NBA. And he isn't entering some calm developmental environment. He's entering Wilt's orbit. Now, that's a weird place to start your career. Playing alongside Wilt Chamberlain had to be its own psychological experiment. On the one hand, congratulations, you're teammates with the most dominant offensive force alive. On the other hand, good luck being noticed as your own person. If you win, the story's Wilt. If you lose, the story's Wilt. If you play well, maybe somebody mentions it after they mention Wilt. If you play poorly, now you're the help that Wilt didn't have. And that's not fair. Meschery in this game breaks out of it. The first quarter doesn't exactly scream Philadelphia Classic. Boston wins it 34-23. And that's a dangerous opening, because Boston with an early lead in the Garden is like giving a raccoon access to your kitchen cabinets. It may not end immediately, but the damage is coming. The Celtics get what they want early. The building's alive, and the Dynasty has its rhythm. But the Warriors still don't disappear. Second quarter, Philadelphia hits back hard. They win the quarter 33-18. At halftime, Philadelphia leads 56-52. That halftime score is the first sign that this isn't going to be a clean Celtics story. Boston's at home. They have the Dynasty, Russell, and Red. And Philadelphia's ahead. The third quarter's tight. Boston wins it 28-25. So after 3 quarters, Philadelphia leads by only 1 point, 81-80. So now we're not talking about a scare. We're talking about a real chance. 1 quarter, Game 7, Warriors by 1. And this is where the game becomes mean. Old basketball was comfortable being mean. Everyone's playing huge minutes. Wilt plays all 48. Russell plays all 48. Meschery plays all 48. Sam Jones and Guy Rogers play 43. Cousy plays 39. Heinsohn plays 39. Ariza and Gola play 38. Modern load management would see this box score and call the therapist. But that's the environment. You play, then you keep playing. Then when you're tired, you continue playing because the alternative is losing Game 7 and thinking about it forever. Meschery doesn't just survive those minutes. He uses them. He keeps scoring. He gets to the line. He makes the free throws. 12 for 13 from the line in a 2-point game isn't trivia. It's the sound of a rookie refusing to blink. And he's doing it against Boston. Not some soft middle-of-the-pack team waiting for golf season. Boston. Russell's Celtics. It's the team that made other teams feel like guests in their own era. So here's the box score shape for Philadelphia. Meschery, 32. Wilt, 22 and 22. Ariza, 19. Rogers, 18. Gola, 16. And that's a good Game 7 offensive distribution. It should travel. It should give you a chance anywhere. And it does. But Boston answers with Sam Jones at 28, Heinsohn at 25, Cousy at 21, Russell with 19 and 22 rebounds. And that's the Celtics being the Celtics. They don't need one man to swallow the entire game. They need enough guys to make you defend every single part of the machine. So the Hall of Fame situation here is obnoxious, okay? For Philadelphia, you got Wilt Chamberlain, Paul Ariza, and Tom Gola. Meschery's not a Hall of Famer, but he becomes an All-Star and has his number retired by the Warriors. That's its own franchise-level immortality. Al Attles is there too, and if you're telling Warriors history properly, which I'm trying to, Attles is not an optional ad. He's a load-bearing man. For Boston, it's almost stupid. Russell, Cousy, Sam Jones, Heinsohn, Casey Jones, Frank Ramsey, Satch Sanders, Red Auerbach. You read the Celtics roster and it starts to feel less like a team and more like somebody spilled the Hall of Fame database onto one bench. And that's why this Tom Meschery game matters. He's doing all this in the middle of basketball royalty. Still, he becomes the Warriors' best scorer for the night. The rivalry piece is also important. Warriors-Celtics isn't just Steph Curry versus Boston in 2022. This thing has old roots. Philadelphia and Boston were early NBA pillars. The Warriors had won titles. The Celtics were building the greatest dynasty the league had ever seen. Wilt and Russell turned the matchup into a philosophical dispute with elbows. The common thread between these two franchises is that they were tonal opposites in almost every way. Boston was team structure, Philadelphia was star gravity. Boston's continuity, Philadelphia is about to move west. Boston's the champion machine, Philadelphia is trying to make the machine choke, and that's enough. Late in the fourth quarter, Philadelphia almost does it. Boston leads 107-104. The Warriors need something. Naturally, it goes through Wilt. Chamberlain scores over Russell and gets fouled. He makes the free throw. Tie game, 107-107. And that's the moment. That's the whole season condensed into one possession. Wilt, the greatest scorer alive, going through Russell, the greatest winner alive, to tie Game 7 in Boston Garden. If Philadelphia wins this game, that possession becomes sacred text. But Sam Jones exists. And Sam Jones, historically, is a problem. He gets the ball. Wilt comes out trying to contest it. Jones hits the jumper with about 2 seconds left. Boston 109, Philadelphia 107. And there's your season. You're punched in the throat. I love and hate that ending because it's so brutally Celtics. You finally climb the wall, and then a Celtic pops out of a side door and says, Actually, no. The Warriors don't even lose because they collapse. They lose because Sam Jones makes the shot. That's cleaner and crueler. This is where Meschery's performance gets trapped. Because if Jones misses and Philadelphia wins in overtime, or Philadelphia gets one last miracle, Meschery's 32 becomes famous. Not deep cut guy on the internet famous. Actually famous. Rookie forward, leads Warriors in scoring in Game 7 upset at Boston Garden. Wilt reaches the finals in his 50-point season. Final game of the Philadelphia Warriors, becomes a franchise legend. Instead, Jones hits the shot. So Meschery becomes a footnote. And that's the part I keep circling. It's not fair. Sports history isn't always about who played the best. Sometimes it's about who played the best on the right side of the final score. We pretend memory is merit-based, but it's not. Memory is a nightclub with a stupid bouncer. Meschery had the performance, he just didn't have the ending. As for the post-game, we can reconstruct the emotional math. Boston's room is relieved, even if they'd never want to sound relieved. Champions are allowed to admit very few things, but they'd been pushed. They were at home, and they trailed after 3 quarters. They needed a late Sam Jones jumper to survive. It's not business as usual. That's business almost becoming an emergency. Meanwhile, Philadelphia's room had to be sick. Not embarrassed, sick. There's a difference. If you get run out of the building, fine. The autopsy's easy. You say they were better. You pack your bags, and you lie to yourself about next year. But losing by 2 in Game 7, after leading through 3 quarters, that one lives in the walls. For Wilt, the loss becomes evidence in the case people are already building. He averaged 50 points per game and didn't win the championship. True sentence. Incomplete sentence. But true sentences with missing context are basically sports media's love language. For the Warriors, this is the end of the Philadelphia chapter. That makes this loss a lot heavier. This is the final game before the franchise moves to San Francisco. Paul Arizin doesn't go with them. The team's identity changes. The city changes, and the future changes. So the Philadelphia Warriors don't go out meekly. They go out in Boston Garden in Game 7, losing by 2, with the rookie forward leading them in scoring. That's a hell of an exit, even if nobody wants to use the word hell just after their season ended. For Boston, this game is a bridge to another title. They go on to face the Lakers in the finals, with that series also going 7 games. Boston wins Game 7 in overtime. Russell puts up 30 points and 40 rebounds. The Celtics win another championship, and the Dynasty keeps breathing. For Philadelphia, the season ends here. The franchise moves, Wilt keeps being Wilt, and the arguments keep multiplying. Meschery? He becomes more interesting. He makes the All-Star team in 1963. He stays with the Warriors as they move from Philadelphia to San Francisco. He becomes part of the franchise's early West Coast identity. Later on, he plays for the Seattle Supersonics and finishes with nearly 10,000 points and almost 6,700 rebounds. The Warriors retire his number 14. That's the basketball life. Then there's the life after basketball. And honestly, for Meschery, it's even better. Meschery becomes a teacher. He becomes a poet. He writes. He keeps making things. He doesn't just sit around polishing the same old story from when he was young. He has other rooms to enter. That makes him one of my favorite kinds of athletes for a series like this. Not because he's secretly better than the famous guys. He's not. We don't have to do that annoying thing where every deep cut gets inflated into a misunderstood genius. Sometimes a very good player is just a very good player, and that's okay. Meschery matters because he had a full life, a real career, and one night where he almost stepped into the center of the sport's biggest argument. And that's more interesting than pretending that every story has to be a crown. This game is perfect in terms of being a gateway drug for a new fan. Game 7, Boston Garden. Wilt Chamberlain's impossible season. Bill Russell's dynasty. The Warriors leading after 3 quarters and a rookie named Tom Meschery outscoring Wilt. Wilt scoring the game in the final seconds, then Sam Jones ending it anyway. That works in every era. That's the sport. The details change, the shorts get longer, then shorter again. The spacing changes, the contracts change, the broadcasts change. The discourse gets louder and dumber and somehow more expensive. But the basic thing is the same. One possession, one shot. One team survives, One team has to spend the rest of its life explaining what almost happened. This game is a good cure for lazy superstar history because, yes, Wilt versus Russell matters. You can't tell this game without them, but you also can't reduce the game to them and act like you did the job. That's just Wikipedia with confidence. Meschery forces you to look harder. He forces you to ask, who else was in this game? Who carried the scoring while the Giants fought? Who had the night of his life and still got written in pencil? That's the value of this episode. Tom Meschery wasn't the headline, but he was the story hiding under the headline. 32 points in Game 7 isn't a clerical error. It's not, oh, neat. It's a flare. And it came from a rookie who'd lived through war, displacement, reinvention, college stardom, and then walked into the NBA next to Wilt Chamberlain, where being noticed is not exactly included in the benefits package. He got noticed in this game. Not enough by history, but enough by us. And that's the job here. Warrior 100 isn't just a parade of the obvious. It can't be. If all we do is pick the brightest names and the cleanest wins, we're not telling franchise history. If all we do is pick the brightest names and the cleanest wins, we're not telling franchise history. We're decorating the hallway. A real franchise is made of games like this one. Losses that still matter. Performances that deserved a better ending. Players who weren't the main character, but had one night where they grabbed the script and started making edits. Meschery did that, and the Celtics still won. Sam Jones still hit the shot. Wilt and Russell still got the mythology. But Tom Meschery got 32, and that number deserves a little air. Next time on Sports Lab 100, we go back to baseball for Astro 36. Larry Anderson, June 23rd, 1986. Larry Anderson's one of those baseball figures where the career has layers. Astros reliever, longtime big leaguer, future broadcaster, future answer to one of the most famous trade questions in baseball history. But for Astro 36, we're catching him in Houston in 1986, before he becomes a punchline, before he becomes the voice, and before the Bagwell trade turns his name into front office folklore. That's next. For today, Tom Meschery gets the last word. Not because he won. He didn't. Because on April 5th, 1962, in the last game the Warriors ever played in Philadelphia, in the middle of Wilt versus Russell, in the middle of Celtics inevitability, in the middle of one of the loudest historical arguments baseball has, Tom Meschery played 48 minutes and led everybody with 32 points. It's not the whole story, but it's the part we came here to notice. Stay kind, keep moving, and thanks for watching.